I asked my audience to create alternate countries for a contest. Some people went out and beyond, sending more than 100 pages worth of information about their fictional country. Let's look at the submissions and determine a winner. This is a whole mini alternate history scenario with a lovely ending. During the Austro-Prussian War, revolts tear down the Habsburg Empire, leading to the total annexation of Austrian parts into Prussia. Italy is also united as they beat up the Habsburgs, annexing South Tyrol and Dalmatia. The Franco-Prussian War happens at the same time, but Luxembourg is also annexed as it was considered German and its people saw the benefits. Denmark would also eventually join the empire after another war. This is how Germany formed in this alternate timeline. In the Balkans, the First Balkan War starts with the usual Balkan countries going to war against the Ottoman Empire. This time, Italy and Germany also declare war on the Ottoman Empire. Eventually, after 6 months of conflict and British intervention, the Turks surrender and lose the Balkans, Istanbul, Cyprus and Antalya. During the Moroccan crisis, however, Germany backed by the Balkans, Italy, Japan, Brazil and the United States would face off Sweden, Norway, Russia, Britain, Spain and France. The war would start in February 1913 and end in September 1916. The British would suffer from heavy rebellions, causing more countries like Iran, Iraq and Egypt to side with the Central Powers. Japanese and American troops win the Pacific and Indian rebels succeed. In 1915, Russia falls to a massive coalition and rebels, losing the Baltics, Poland and southern Ukraine. Paris, Madrid, Dublin and Stockholm fall to the coalition too. In the peace deal, Germany annexes all of Sweden and Norway and puppets Belgium, taking the Ardennes. France loses more territory around Alsace-Lorraine and the Ardennes. Italy gets Valencia, the Balearic Islands, Savoy, Tunisia and Corsica. Among others, Poland is given independence as a German ally. Germany deposes the monarchy in 1936, followed by some initial work. They become a full democracy that is thriving. The capital is in Berlin and significant autonomy is given to the minorities. Although many still wish to succeed, but that will be in another time. Communist revolutions in Britain, France, Russia, Serbia and Hungary lead to a communist takeover with little resistance. Spain sides with them under a military junta. Italy goes ultra-nationalist but stays with Germany to combat the communists. The top 5 most populated cities in Europe are all German, being Berlin, Vienna, Danzig, Copenhagen, Munich, all in that order. As you can imagine, the ethnicity of the nation would be very mixed. Here is a pie chart of how it would look like. The population of this world's Germany is 989 million, including their colonial empire. The economy is ranked second, as they would be behind the United States. This submission is short, but still very interesting. In this alternate world, the Sami people were given less autonomy in Sweden, Norway, Finland and the Soviet Union. This leads the Sami people to desire for a strong and independent Sampi state. This was especially prominent in the Soviet Union, where the Kola Peninsula became essentially ungovernable. After mass protests in the 1960s, as well as pressure from the United Nations and Finland, Norway releases an independent state for the Sami, joined shortly after by Sweden, the Soviet Union and Finland. After gaining their independence, there were problems with standardizing the Sami language. The country followed a similar political path to its fellow Nordic countries and joined the European Union in 1995 alongside Sweden, Finland and Austria. The capital city would be Giron, with the country being a unitarily parliamentary republic. The population would be a bit over 1.5 million people. The state suffers from small population and its economy is very reliant on trade with its neighbors, profiting from its great deal of natural resources. The Empire of Avera you may recognize from one of my live streams, where a viewer formed them and they managed to almost take over the entire world. This scenario takes place in a world that is not on planet Earth, but somewhere in space, I think. We are provided with some information about the political parties and the political system. Here is a map of the country, including the surrounding islands and nations. Here you can see how much detail was put into the history of the nation, with an event happening every other year. There are too much, so I cannot go over all of them. This would be the flag of the nation, which I like. It looks like an alternate Franco-German union. This is a behemoth of a submission, and I will not be able to cover all of it since the history of the nation is 91 pages. This includes political parties, coalitions, wars, and etc. Each state also has its own war and flag, so I highly recommend you check out the submission on your own, link in my description. There are 13 pages dedicated just to the economy of this nation, with years for how much each person would earn, the development of different districts, and etc. Here you can see all the facts of the state, as well as how they are placed in this square grid map. Down below we have a full constitution of the union, as well as the rights of every governing position. There are very detailed points in many policies, like the problem of succession from the union. Here we're presented with a fictional island nation. I don't know for certain as I wasn't provided with the history of it. What we're looking at is the constitution of the nation. It would be ruled by a singular authoritarian figure, ensuring no divides of the nation. Then we're shown the state names of this dominion, and after that we have the amendments of the constitution. We're presented with a coat of arms and the roadmap of the island nation, which is really interesting. In this scenario, the Russian Federation collapses, and in its place, some regional powers form. One we will explore today is the Uralic Federation. Let us see the history behind this nation. In early 2025, as the war in Ukraine favored the Ukrainians, Russia started to lose more and more grounds. Eventually, as Crimea was captured, protests erupted and brought down the government. This crisis gave a lot of aspiring nations a chance to leave Russia, and many new states declared independence, supported by the West. There wasn't that much fighting because the central government in Moscow was not really able to fight after what happened in Ukraine and having a lot of their army now in other states. Yugra declares independence on the 3rd of October 2025. Gazprom has a massive presence in Yugra and Yamalya due to the amount of oil there. When there was little hope for the central government being restored, Gazprom formed a government in Yugra and Yamalya. It was basically just a massive corporate petrol state. Quite dystopian as well, it basically forced everyone in the country to do as they were told, as people in the higher-ups were only focused on making profit. On the 16th of August 2026, the Ukrainian Revolution takes place. Protests have been occurring for weeks by this point, due to the horrible treatment and inequality in the country. Riots started breaking out and soon the army defected and staged a coup, taking control of the country after a few days. Yugra now had a transitional non-corporate government and broke up Gazprom into many smaller companies and nationalized some of the oil industry as well. A referendum in Yugra and Komi to unite is successful in March 2nd, 2027. The union of Yugra and Komi became known as the Uralic Federation. The Uralic Federation would become very rich due to oil money and due to investment of that money into state institutions. Here you can see the flag of the nation, population, biggest cities, capital, form of government, and etc. The Confederative Republic of Ochidentia is a Mediterranean nation with a deep history. In 1769, where Corsica broke away from Genoa, they were sold to France, but this time the French failed to defeat and annex Corsica. This is due to Sardinia coming to Corsica's defense. The two island nations formed a dual monarchy, but in 1773 they transitioned to a centralized government. In 1815, Naples would historically propose to unite with Sicily, but this would be declined where both nations would remain separate. After the Great War, Corsica Sardinia would unite with Majorca and Sicily, forming the Democratic Federative Republic of Ochidentia. In the Second World War, the Republic of Ochidentia joined the Allies, due to fear of Italy attempting to annex Sicily and Sardinia. After the fall of France in 1940, Ochidentia was next on the chopping block, where they were bombed into oblivion and then invaded. Germany annexed Majorca, Vichy France annexed Corsica, and Italy annexed both Sicily and Sardinia. This wouldn't last long, as in 1943 the Allies liberated Ochidentia from the Axis powers. In the Cold War, the Republic of Ochidentia remained neutral and didn't ally with any side. The nation focused with building strong diplomatic ties with all countries around the globe, promoting ideas of peace and advocating for disarmament. The capital city would be in Palermo, with the island nation having 9 million people and being about the same size as Switzerland. The country would join the European Union and use the euro, but they wouldn't join NATO. The brief history of Britonia is quite unique. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476, Britonia was founded from some of the remains of the empire. It kept its official language as Latin and continued development on its own. The country would have a population of just under 3 million, speaking the Latin language and being ruled by a monarch. Britonia would remain independent up until 1781, when it was split into two nations, Normannia and Britannia. Britonia was home to many of the most important inventions of humanity, including electricity. Here we have the Empire of Hannover, but information as how this was formed wasn't provided. The capital of this great country would be Oldenburg, with it having the 25th strongest military. They would have the 19th highest GDP on earth, which is very impressive. Down below, we are provided with some flags. I can say that I really like number 5, the state of Groningen, because of the hearts. As the Second World War unfolds, the fate of East Prussia has become sealed for its disappearance from the world map. Or does it? In this timeline, Stalin had a small change of heart to become more sympathetic to the Germans, where in the end, he made East Prussia as an autonomous oblast, keeping in German, unlike the expulsions in our timeline. Historically, immediately after 1945, 600,000 Russians moved to the region, as well as the deportation of 600,000 Germans. This created an unstable population of 1.4 million people, which became unsustainable for the local government to manage. Königsberg Castle and many more historical buildings were destroyed to remove the Prussian heritage from the region. Where in 1991, calls for a new German state has been made by the Germans living in the exclave. They declared its independence alongside Latvia and Estonia. As the turmoil in Moscow by the coup has been erupting, there is nothing that they can do to stop them from gaining their independence. After their independence was secured, the local government made an agreement in Budapest, where all nuclear weapons that had been stockpiled in the region throughout the Soviet era had to be given up. After the 90s ended, Königsberg oversaw economic and population growth in the region, due to investment and trade with the region. Königsberg is now wealthier than Estonia and the Czech Republic, becoming the 18th richest nation in Europe. Today, most people in Königsberg could speak German and Russian, with literature being written in the Cyrillic alphabet. A transition back to Latin writing style had been made by the local government, yet the science of communist pasts still prevails, where for example, we can see the Cyrillic text being written on older apartment buildings in the Soviet era. Here we can see the population, flag, GDP, largest ethnic groups, as well as the population chart. We are also provided with a list of the largest cities names, as well as the provinces of the region. Soon I will release part 2, so you can watch this right now. See you there!